Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we are diving into a complete paradigm shift when it comes to organizational psychology, hard data, and what it actually means to measure success in the workplace. We're going to completely dismantle a fundamental assumption you probably have about how companies operate. We'll be looking at the invisible, underlying forces that dictate why some teams thrive while others just silently fall apart. So get ready because we are about to rethink everything you thought you knew about corporate dashboards.
So let me pose a bit of a paradox to you. Imagine you're managing a modern HR dashboard. You pull a report on company actions regarding personnel over the last month, and the result comes back, nothing changed. Instantly, an amber warning light goes off in your head, right? I mean, we naturally assume that nothing changed equals dangerous stagnation. We tend to think it means organizational inaction, a total lack of engagement, or maybe leadership is just falling asleep at the wheel. But I really want to challenge you today to ask, is that actually true? Or is it possible we're completely misreading the signal?
Okay, let's dive right into this. And to do that properly, we need to ground this explainer in some hard data. We are looking at a highly specific number here, 0.0569. This is a Pearson correlation drawn from a massive global poll. We're talking 87 countries, 20 languages, and nearly 1,700 participants. And because the critical value to prove reliability was 0.0481, this result is statistically very significant. But what does it actually measure? Well, it links the response "nothing changed" in company personnel actions directly to a very specific, highly evolved worldview in spiral dynamics theory, a worldview known as the Turquoise vMEME.
To unravel exactly what that correlation means, here's our roadmap for today. First, the paradox of inaction. Second, decoding the turquoise signal. Third, the perspective clash. Fourth, the hidden costs of forced action. Fifth, predictive organizational modeling. And finally, how an adaptive dashboard is vibe coding the future of management. Let's get to it.
Part 1. The paradox of inaction. Rethinking the dashboard.
Look, if you want to understand why corporate culture so often feels broken, we really have to look at how modern tools treat stability as a problem that needs to be solved. In the old-school approach to management, we basically use a chainsaw. It assumes a company is just a machine, employees are just cogs, and the golden rule is that activity equals engagement, meaning if you aren't constantly reorganizing, firing, hiring, or launching some new initiative, you're failing. But the systemic reality is completely different. True systemic health dictates that stability actually equals adaptive resilience. You know, sometimes doing absolutely nothing is literally the highest form of management.
Moving on to Part 2, decoding the turquoise signal, systemic wholeness.
To really grasp who views nothing changed as a positive outcome, we turn to spiral dynamics, specifically the turquoise vMEME, or value system. This worldview reads organizational behavior through a lens of systemic wholeness and integrative coordination. For a turquoise-minded leader, seeing nothing changed on a personnel report is definitely not passive observation. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a profound, active recognition that adaptive structures are holding strong. It means the system's capacity to adapt is functioning perfectly without needing any sort of crisis-driven disruption. They don't see stagnation at all. They see a beautiful, integrative resilience.
Part 3. The perspective clash. One metric, three views. Now this is where things get really wild. You have one single piece of data, the observation that nothing changed regarding personnel this month, but depending on the psychological profile of the team looking at that exact same data, it means completely different things. Take the Orange vMEME, for instance. Orange is that classic achiever, Wall Street hustle mindset. To Orange, nothing changed is a nightmare. It's a massive missed opportunity for strategic optimization. They literally panic. Meanwhile, the blue vMEME, which values order and rules, looks at nothing changed and feels totally safe. They just see procedural continuity. And then, of course, there's Turquoise, which sees integrative stability. So you've got one organizational observation and three completely diverging realities.
Part 4, the cost of forced action, breaking the system.
So what happens when a company relies entirely on that panicked orange mindset and forces action just for the sake of acting? Well, we see this incredibly dangerous downward cascade. Step 1. We start with activity-biased framing. The dashboard basically demands action. Step 2. Systemic misreading occurs. The manager completely ignores the natural stability of the system. Step 3. Performative intervention. Management launches a huge reorg, or maybe cuts salaries purely just to prove they are doing something. And finally, Step 4. Silent coherence drift. The system doesn't dramatically explode. Instead, the integrative threads just quietly dissolve, trust erodes, and the organizational soul drifts away. It's a quiet killer.
Part 5,
predictive organizational modeling, the algebra of conscience.
To actually stop this silent drift, we have to move away from gut instinct management and embrace rigorous mathematical frameworks. Consider this quote, which is deeply inspired by the work of Soviet-American mathematician Vladimir Lefebvre during the Cold War. He proposed something amazing. That ethical choices, guilt, shame, and trust weren't just fluffy philosophical concepts, they were actual mathematical functions that could be mapped. This means we can take the messy, chaotic reality of a company's soul and turn it into a solvable equation. We can map the true state vector of an organization.
But listen, to do this math, you need incredibly precise inputs. You have to sense way beyond visible behaviors. There are basically 5 layers of sensing required here. Most companies only ever look at the red layer. Did you show up? Did you hit your quota? But that's just a lagging indicator. We actually have to measure the yellow layer of motivation, the green layer of trust and leadership, the deeply hidden orange layer of internal psychology and burnout, and the foundational purple layer of demographics. You absolutely need all 5 to understand the hidden wiring of your team.
Let's walk through the SD Navigator blueprint to see how this builds a continuous closed-loop management science. Step 1, you survey to measure fear and trust. Step 2, you profile and map out that mathematical state vector. Step 3, you assign weights, like how much does fear matter compared to financial profit. Step 4, you model and run simulations to check for any unintended butterfly effects. And only then, Step 5, you act. This continuous loop ticks the algebra of conscience and turns it into a highly tactical navigation tool.
And finally, Part 6, AI and the Adaptive Dashboard, Vibe Coding the Future. How do we realistically track these abstract psychological profiles in the real world? Well, behind the scenes is just sheer computing muscle. The system pulls from over 13,000 distinct global correlations. It takes all that incredibly messy human data, your team's tribal instincts, their underlying fears, their core needs, and translates it all into a clean, predictable psychological vector. It tells you exactly what spiral dynamics color your team is operating from at any given moment.
And here is where it becomes a literal superpower. Using a dynamic programming model, a manager can actually test drive an action before they do it. Imagine you want to implement unpaid vacations to save the company some money. The system will instantly show you the butterfly effect of that choice. For a green, community-minded team, it might predict increased solidarity as they sacrifice to save a colleague's job. But for an orange, achievement-minded team, it's going to predict a massive spike in fear, a total loss of trust, and widespread resignations. You can literally A/B test your leadership before causing any real-world damage.
What makes this incredibly accessible right now is the 2026 trend of AI vibe coding. Organizational leaders no longer need a massive IT engineering department to build these complex apps. You can simply instruct a large language model using natural language. You just tell the AI, hey, map the vMEME interpretation of our recent policy change, and it builds the interface without traditional code. The technology completely removes the coding bottleneck, empowering you to rapidly deploy adaptive HR analytics.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. We so often think of algorithms and math as cold, detached, and robotic. But this system, it actually represents scalable empathy. Think about it. In the dynamic programming model, if you mathematically weight employee fear and well-being as heavily as you weight financial costs, the equation demands that you be a good leader. It literally penalizes you for creating a toxic work environment. By turning feelings into math, the algorithm forces leadership to be warmer, more attentive, and infinitely more empathetic.
Your organization isn't just a machine. It's a living, breathing ecosystem. You can't just fix it with a wrench. You have to read its state vector. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought today. Take a hard look at your own metrics. What breaks in your own organization when true integrative stability is penalized as inaction? When you're forced to move just for the sake of moving, what quiet coherence are you inadvertently destroying? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the algebra of conscience. I really hope it empowers you to lead with better math and a much bigger heart. Catch you on the next explainer.